eventually led me to become a yoga teacher. And then I became a Tantra teacher, doing workshops on the island. But this was like 7-8 years ago. I stopped doing all those things, right? And then starting my online business, relationship coaching, love, sex coaching, everything that involves love and relationships, right? And specifically for men, because I saw that there was, a lot of offerings for women, but less so for men. I don't want to be part of this if, this is going to be sensational or going to put down Tantra and make it into something ridiculous. And I feel, maybe that promise was not really kept.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am here with Steffo Shambo. How are you, Steffo?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Very nice. So Steffo is a men's relationship coach. First of all, I'd like to ask you, what is your story in life?
I was growing up in Sweden, and I felt this search for something more in life since I was young, right? And that led me to have a few awakening experiences when I was in my adolescence, and eventually set me out on this pilgrimage around the world. So when I was in my early 20s, I just felt I had enough with the normal lifestyle of working, and I could never really have a job more than just a few months. There was something missing in my life. So it was like this natural tendency for seeking, and I became a vegetarian because I felt that was like what my soul is true for my soul, and things like that. And the next thing was that one of my best friends, same age, neighbors, he died all of a sudden in an accident. So there was kind of like another wake-up call. And then I decided, I want to live once. So let's see what's out there in the world. So I sold my apartment, I sold my car, I, put my life back home in Sweden on hold, and bought a one-way ticket just with a backpack, like back in the days, and didn't know when I was going to come back. And I was traveling for 2 years, like non-stop throughout the world, South America, Australia, Southeast Asia, all around the world basically. And on that trip I learned so much about myself. And towards the end of that trip in India, I discovered yoga, in Rishikesh, foothills of the Himalayas. And I was just like, wow, something clicked. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is probably what I was searching for this whole time. It quenched my thirst for that seeking, And it was just like a light switch. Something happened, and I was like dedicated my life ever since towards yoga practice, and specifically tantric yoga practices, meaning the classical Kundalini Hatha yoga, working with energies and so on and so forth. And one thing led to another. So I was that led me, because it was a lot of people traveling between India and Koh Phangan, right? Mm-hmm. So I started to make friends with a lot of the Koh Phangan community, and back here there was not a big community, very small. Everyone knew each other like 11-12 years ago.
Wow.
And I've been here once, but then they brought me back here and we traveled together, and they were already very dedicated yogis, right? Mm-hmm. So I came here and just dedicated my life to practice, like 4 or 5 hours a day for years, and that eventually led me to become a yoga teacher. And then I became a Tantra teacher, doing workshops on the island. But this was like 7-8 8 years ago, I stopped doing all those things, right? And then starting my online business, which was transitioning from a yoga teacher into online coaching, basically, and specifically relationship coaching, love, sex coaching, everything that involves love and relationships, right? And specifically for men, because I saw that there was, you know, a lot of offerings for women, but less so for men. So I felt this is a good place to you know, pass it on and you know, dedicate my work towards. Yeah, so that's a very short, condensed version.
That sounds very cool, though. Like there are a couple of things I picked up. The first one, you mentioned awakening experiences when you were younger. Can you define what that is?
For me, an awakening experience is when you kind of discover something about yourself which you were blind to before. So for me, it was about seeing my thoughts from a distance instead of being absorbed in them. So I read my first spiritual book, or one of my first spiritual book by Eckhart Tolle, probably know, most people know. So this was my introduction, and this book did something to me. It was like, it resonated with me. And after reading this book, I remember I was in my car with my siblings, and my car broke down in the busiest street of Stockholm, and there was a king's parade. So the king with all the police and escorts and the you know, limousines and the horses, everything was just passing by, and I was like on the wrong side opposing them. So there was this very intense, embarrassing situation. And in that moment, instead of just panicking or stressing out or being embarrassed, something switched in my perception. Instead of being identified with those thoughts and feelings, I just zoomed out. And from there, it just, you know, things just started happening. Like, okay, I need to take this action. I need to calm down my siblings, you know. And so it doesn't maybe sound profound, but for me, the profound was just who I am identified as, you know. And that this is this shift of discovering the witness consciousness, basically, for the first time.
That's very meaningful, actually. The way you experienced it is very personal to you, obviously. I had similar experiences of awakening, so to speak, when, as you said very, very effectively, so you are a person, something happens to you, you have some sort of realization, aha moment, some experience of sort, and after that, you look yourself and life slightly differently, right? So it's, I think most people maybe haven't really, you know, experienced that, but quite a few have, and it's really something amazing. It's a predisposition, a gift of sort, I suppose.
And I think some people experience it without understanding what they have experienced, and they just, you know, push it away. Because I also remember reflecting back that I had glimpses of those things before, but never registered that in my experience or my mind.
Okay, so did you have, you said you had other awakenings following that. Did you have sort of mystical experiences where you were doing some sort of yoga practice of sort, and then something came at the end of that? Or all your awakenings were sort of random, just during life?
No, a lot of them has been through Kundalini practices. So awakening and working with Kundalini is a very powerful force, and this can bring a certain kind of trance experiences, and you know, this kind of almost like an LSD experience, because it's basically working with the pineal gland, right? In Hatha Yoga we say the soma is stored in the pineal gland, it's dripped down into the fire of the belly. So if you reverse this and start to activate the pineal gland, you can have this sort of experiences, you know. And again, I don't think that experiences are necessarily the aim for tantric yoga. It's more of the liberation, moksha, right? So experiences are nice to have, and they feel good, and they're awesome, but they're not the main goal, I think. But yes, so having kind of this, not full on like LSD fractals, but seeing visuals, seeing like lights, seeing how things start to change, you know, and all of a sudden I'm just questioning, who am I? How did I get here? Like, you're on the yoga mat in Thailand, and all of a sudden like you're your consciousness is almost like resetted for a moment, and you just wonder like, where am I? Who am I? And it's almost like you have this fresh newborn eyes, and you just start to question everything, and the colors just start to become a little bit stronger. It's so that is when you work with this Kundalini energy and the vagus nerve, right? You have certain of those experiences, and of course, working with the shadow, I experienced a lot of transformations, you know. So in the beginning of my transformation on how I became what I did and passing that on to others is that I worked a lot with my sexual shadow, with my childhood, with my inner child and all these things, and had huge epiphanies and breakthroughs and insights into my own shadow, basically. So I would also describe that as maybe not a mystical experience, but at least like a transformational experience into one's being.
So I definitely, resonate with what you say, and there's another aspect you just mentioned now which is interesting to me. So in Jungian psychology, the shadow is one of the archetypes. What is your definition of shadow?
Shadow for me is like our unconscious that we're not aware of, or the parts of ourselves that we don't accept, that we want to remain hidden from others, that maybe we are ashamed about, that we haven't told anyone about, or that we're not even aware of. Like, sometimes we have this conscious will of like, I want to do this, but then there's another unconscious force that prevents us from doing that. We always have this in life, like, oh, I don't want to do this, but then you do this anyway, or I want to do that, but you don't do it, procrastinate, whatever. So I feel that part that, is sabotaging, self-sabotage is the shadow, basically.
Okay, of course, having a glimpse over it or making it more conscious helps you with dealing with the parts of you that maybe are less functional or prevent you from having a fuller life. Is that right?
Correct.
Very nice. And with regards to the shadow, of course, possibly, if you look at the Freudian or sort of psychology, lots of like sexuality is buried into the shadow, right? Because we are ashamed of sexuality, there's taboos around sexuality. And as a guy, of course, you're supposed to behave in a certain way that the superego society imposes on you for the good of everybody to a certain extent, yeah? But, you look at the shadow and you look at the sexual aspect of men. So not an easy subject to talk to start with, right? Because there's, as we said, taboos and shame and all sorts of problems with it. But you mentioned after your journey, you kind of fell into it, you decided that there was a good space for you to teach. But can you tell us a little bit more how you actually went into, coaching men?
Yeah, it's very important for the reason of everything you just said, and there is a huge stigma around men have to be performing or believing that we have to perform, right? So we want to perform in life and make money and think that will bring us happiness, but also perform in the bedroom, and if we can't, and if we don't get an erection or whatever, we seem as failure, not, men enough or whatever. And that is kind of a social stigma throughout, school years, upbringing, porn, education from porn and all that. So there's a huge lack of sexual education, like on a deeper level, except like wear a condom and STDs. That's not education, that's just safety, right? So there's no education on like how to have sex. 99.99% of men learn sex from porn, and porn, as we know, is not real sex. Most women don't even like that type of sex, and it's portraying a sexuality which maybe is not belonging to us. We don't get to discover our own sexual nature in that. So I just feel that and the same goes for women with all the slut shaming and body image and all that stuff, but we have our own struggles, right? So I feel it's such a huge topic in society that really needs to be dealt with, because a lot of pain, suffering, imprisonment, struggles are due to, the sexual shadow or the pain coming from that, right? So I believe, and my mission is to kind of spread a more sexual awareness in the world, and helping just maybe even one man, and helping that family and his kids will ripple out, So I feel very passionate about this because I feel it's really, really needed, especially since women are empowering themselves right now more and more.
And I think what you teach is also two aspects of it. There's a psychological aspect, but also more of a practical, experiential aspect. Is that right? Because you are teaching techniques that allow men to be more present, more aware of their sexuality. Can you describe exactly what you teach?
Right. So over the years, I've developed an own method, so to say, FLT method, the 5-level transformation, taking from the idea of that we have 5 layered bodies, right? So the physical body, this is a yoga philosophy, and outside of that, we have the energy body, emotional body, spiritual body, and then, the bliss body and so on. So we have all these bodies, and I've taken if we really wanted to go to the depth of transformation, instead of spending years and years in therapy just talking about the pain again and again, how can we get to the fastest transformation possible? How can I condense my, years of doing this into just a short period of time? So what I came up with was the FLT method for 9 weeks, right? And anyone can do it online from anywhere. And basically what it is to first to go in on an emotional level to heal whatever blockages or limiting emotions that are stored in the body. So that might be that you are having a pattern of always attracting unavailable women because your mother couldn't be emotionally there for you, you know? Or you are emotionally absent because you grew up without a father, right? So you attract again and again the same relationship where women are complaining, I cannot feel you, you are not there, you always shut down, and so we have to start there. I cannot just start teaching you about, how to become a sex god or some pickup lines because, maybe it works for those people who just want to screw around and have a lot of sex, but that's not what I do. What I offer is more finding a long-term meaningful love in their life, right? In order to do that, we start there, and that is all about the emotional healing aspect of it. And then we go to a mental level and remove the limiting beliefs men don't cry, men always have to weather the storm, or I am not worthy of these women, I always settle for less. Whatever the mental beliefs are that we have in our mind is programmed like a hard drive, we go in there, right? And only then when we start to remove these things, we're kind of like a clean slate. Then we can start to work with the Kundalini energy, use that for manifesting our love that we want in life. So this is why it's so powerful. If I have single guys that have been single for over a decade coming and doing this work, and within a few weeks or a few months they find a relationship, right? Yeah. Because we use this life force, this sexual energy, this power within to do it. It's not manipulating with pickup lines or techniques. It's you do the inner work, and then you're going to resonate on a different frequency. And only then, then we can start to introduce the sexual mastery, the confidence and all these things. Yeah. So that's the process that I've been developing, and it's really, really powerful and life-changing, to be frank.
Sounds great, because of course sexuality is not just having good sex or having a great relationship. I think of sexuality or the sexual energy in a context of creativity, of embodiment, being able to manifest things. Is one of the biggest drives that we have, right? So if you can be more capable of making sense of your sexuality, and then at some point maybe even being able to use it for creating projects in life, just beyond the woman that you're dating. Yeah. I mean, do you see this parallel between, harnessing your sexuality and being more creative in life?
100%. Yeah, 100%. for myself, I use it for myself to create my own business, and live the lifestyle that I want to live, being a digital nomad and all that stuff. And my clients, I'm not a business coach or anything, but most of my clients, or a lot of my clients, they increase their revenue. Like we had this last guy come on the video, 30% increase after doing these practices. Another guy, start his own online business, the best successful revenue ever had in his life, and so on and so forth. So yes, it stores the creative power. Like you said, sexual energy is not just the erotic version, it's also the life force version, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of just ejaculating, 10 times a day watching porn, and you give the energy away to that, what if you can just harness that, and put it out into another outlet, right? So this is the process that we're doing, but it's very difficult because we all, men, have learned, to ejaculate often and watch porn, and it's just, don't want to, make porn the devil, ejaculate the devil, but too much of it will drain our creative juices.
Yeah, I totally agree. I read Mantak Chia's book, and of course the neo-tantric path is very much about sublimation, or sort of harnessing this energy and then using it at different levels, right? And that's what they learn with you as well. I've been on your mailing list for like 2 or 3 years now, so sometimes I do check. And it is a difficult job to do, but there is a need for it, because again, if you want to learn more about your sexuality, the options, sort of beyond reading a book that you can find, are not so obvious, right? The options, you can, as you said, go to a psychologist, but back in the days you go to a priest and talk about your problems. I don't think it's the case these days anymore, and it's challenging indeed. There's not much out there in terms of people helping you with it.
Yeah, and that's why I feel so passionate about trying to help in this realm in the world right now.
I watched a documentary recently that has been put together by this outfit called Vice, which is quite a mainstream outfit, I think, and you were part of it. You were the only guy part of it, and there were other 5 or 6 women involved in sort of the tantric space in Koh Phangan. So there's been different reactions on social media, because of course it was focused on Koh Phangan, which is our place, right? I'd like to ask you, what do you think of the experience being part of this documentary, and what do you think of the sort of, the final product?
Well, starting with the final product, I will have to say that I wish there would have been a little bit more of representing the power of Neo-Tantra that has so much healing potential and transformation. Doing that, and I feel it didn't really hit the mark of that, to be honest, I think it was rather sensational and a little bit cringe, and it's, I don't know if it did more harm than good to the island, because it kind of seems like this is a very cultish place to go to, when if you've never been here and you watch this for the first time, you don't know anything about Tantra, and you watch this documentary, it looks very cultish and so I don't know if it did more harm than good. Filming it, on the other hand, it was a great experience. Like, they were all good people and they seemed genuine. The producer promised me it will not be sensationalist, and I was very reserved and skeptic when they approached me, because I seen other of their documentaries, and the first meeting I told him, and I was like, I don't want to be part of this if, this is going to be sensational or going to put down Tantra and make it into something ridiculous. And I feel, maybe that promise was not really kept, So, and he told me that they don't think it's sensational. Like, they watched it together with their Vice crew, and they had a screening, right, with all the Vice people. And they felt, it was a great storyline, and it was not sensational in any way. And well, watch it yourself and see, but for me it's quite obvious it is, right? So yeah.
You know, I think it's always difficult when you belong to a niche of sort, you know. So as we mentioned earlier, there are not so many people out there providing a very much needed service around men's sexuality or sexuality in general. And it's quite a niche, although it's growing, hopefully, right? And whenever like sort of mainstream narratives are brought into like a niche, it's difficult to sort of reconcile the two sometimes because, you know, mainstream people believe, you know, what they want to believe or what the mainstream media tells them to believe. And if a mainstream media outlet takes a lens on more of a niche phenomenon, it's very easy that they do it, you know, out of context. Just to create the scandal or to create a sensation. But you know, I appreciate your courage, first of all. Take courage to go in front of people and show who you are, what is your main profession, you know. So it's a risk of sort, and I am a risk taker myself, so I do appreciate that aspect of it. And after watching it, although I agree with you to a certain extent, you know, I think it's not too bad, you know, and you know, many people that will watch this documentary will be maybe put off, but maybe a considerable niche of people or a minority will find it interesting anyway, and they will want to explore Koh Phangan because of it. So I always try to see the positive, you know.
Yeah, I mean. That's also what the producer said, you know, they need to take it from the lens of mainstream people, and then they need to make it funny and, you know, sexualized in some way to kind of get the attention of the mainstream people. I'm just a little bit worried about what kind of people it will attract, because the whole thing is set up to seem like, you know, the perfect nest for the sexual predator. So will it bring more sexual predators to the island, or will it bring like the very hardcore spiritual adepts, you know? Like, I rather have more like spiritual practitioners than just sexual predators on the island. So I don't know. I'm okay with it. Like, I feel like I was not distorted in too many ways like it could have been, you know. So I'm fine with what they put on me, you know, what they filmed on me.
So when you're working with men, because you say sexual predator, I suppose this is an individual that has an obsession around sexuality and that maybe objectifies women. I don't know what's your definition of it, but I'm sure you'll work with some of people that have these kind of challenges as well, right? So if they do come to the island and they try to sort of pick up women in Shritanu, first of all, my experience of girls in Shritanu is that they are very sophisticated, usually sober, you know, very intelligent women and very good at discerning your vibe. But then, if somebody is sexually obsessed, I mean, do you work with people that have these kind of challenges as well? Because that's also not recognizing their shadow, maybe, or there is maybe something that can be done to help somebody obsessive to overcome this problem.
My program is a VIP mentorship. It's a premium experience transformation, so it will not be for everyone. And usually the men that I work with are very committed to the transformation. They make this their priority for the next 9 weeks of their life. And they're coachable to new methods and just open-minded, right? So sexual predators maybe might be having like a narcissistic personality or shadows that are so deep ingrained, so they will not be ready for such a deep transformation. So I think just the level of, because you cannot just sign up for it, you know, you need to speak to me, get a screening, application, all that. So I think it will filter out a lot of, you know, those who are not ready to undergo such a transformation.
With regards to Koh Phangan, I know you've been here many years, like 11 years, I think, yes? So what do you like about, I mean, of course it's a good place if you are in the Tantra space, and I always associate Koh Phangan with freedom to a certain extent, which people like us tend to enjoy. But I mean, what are your, why do you love Koh Phangan so much?
I mean, I came here for the yoga, as I explained already, and I stayed for the lifestyle. That's usually how I say. I haven't been in, you know, what you see in Vice, I'm not part of that community, you know, like it's just so distant from me, even though I live in Sri Tanu, right? So that what we see there, maybe it's like 1% of the island, right? Because you have the digital nomads, you have the families, you have the Israelis, the Russians, you have all this, like, and the fishermen, the Thai, the Burmese, like there's so many communities on the island, and this is just a small part. So I haven't done these like Tantra workshops and things for probably like 7-8 years or so. It's not like in my radar, you know.
Okay.
And that's what I said also in Vice, but they didn't pick that up, and or they didn't include that in the edit. And so what I'm staying here for is what you say. It's the freedom. It's the paradise. I don't call it the Tantra Island. I call it the Paradise Island, right? So I feel it's just this amazing island where everything is conveniently nearby, and it's very health oriented. You have a lot of open-minded people everywhere. That it feels like you're not. It's almost like an alternate reality, a bubble. Like you're not part of this like busy city life anymore, right? So it's just very nourishing for the soul, and I think that's why many people come here for healing and wellness and retreat centers and detox, because man, look, it's just like jungle is nature, is waterfalls, it's the feminine. If you talk like tantric terms, the feminine energy here is the strongest in the entire world. It's built on crystals. There is white beaches all around all around the island, right? There's this clear water. It's clean. It's not like in Bali where it's dirty everywhere. Like it's so lush with feminine energy. Like if you're very stuck in your rigid masculinity or overworking, like come here and just like let go and heal. It's just the best place to do that. And of course, over 11 years being here, I have my soul family here. It's like my best friends are here, and it's very nice to be part of a community, to have that. You know, I drove like 10 minutes to get here and have this talk with you today. In a city, it would probably be like a 40 minutes drive, you know, so everything here is just so convenient and nearby, and you can live a healthy lifestyle, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And as you said, the island is very diverse, and as well as the tantric workshops, you have sound healing, you have body work, you have all sorts of modalities, you know, like Tai Chi, Qigong, now we have the master. Dance, ecstatic dance, different types. It's a very diverse island, and of course you also have the play parties, etc. And that's, you know, part of it, but it's a niche within the niche, so to speak. And absolutely, if you're coming here, you cannot even, sometimes you don't even see that at all, right?
And I wouldn't say that is tantra though. Yeah. That is more the sexual work that is being done here, and that's also what was not edited in the Vice documentary, was that we all agree that this is not a Tantra island, it's a neo-tantric island, it's a sacred sexuality island, right? And we don't even call it. Do you ever call it the Tantra island? I don't know if many people do, you know. So
Not me. I mean, it's the conscious community, so to speak, was started by this very controversial school. Now, the spiritual aspect of the island and the practice aspect has grown so much.
I mean, the full moon part is famous for Koh Phangan, right? And the parties on the other side. So you have all the party people as well, and also some classical tantric people. Not many though, but they are the ones who, you know, don't involve themselves in sex so much. They do more the spiritual practices. They do hours of yoga on the mat every day, and these are the real tantric yoga practitioner, right? Sure. So the only thing I want to say, you know, neo-tantra and tantra are two separate fields, right? And mostly here is the neo-tantric practices, right? So there's not much left of the real tantra.
Yes. I think sound healing is pretty big. You said dancing. Yeah. And all sorts of therapies around energy healing. Energy healing has grown so much, I think, you know. And of course, Reiki, craniosacral therapy, but every sort of practitioner, even senior ones, they have their own sort of version of it. But then we have a great meditation center here, you know, Markwell. Yeah. And we have the wellness centers, of course. We got Ashtanga yoga. We have many things. Yeah. And that's why teacher training courses, great food, all sorts of things, you know. Well, Steffo, thank you very much for coming, and telling us about your background and story in life. It's been very interesting. So,
thank you, Luca. Pleasure.
Cap on cap.
Cap.